of nationalising public property in the United States of America, and you wanted to introduce planning, and you wanted to introduce price control, and you got enough people to vote for you, you could do it. Now, you probably wouldn't get enough people to vote for you, but you could do it. It isn't prescribed in the American Constitution that you can't do this, but it is prescribed in the European Union that you can't do this, right? And that's, I think, a very fundamental difference from the very start of the European Union. And so I don't see it as a peace project, and I don't see it as a project of social advance. When it did represent those things, it was very much based on the idea of responding to the working class as they were organised, responding to the trade union movement, responding to the labour movement, and all of that, perhaps in a positive way in the early days, and there's no doubt that there were advances made. But then there was socialist countries there, and they were a countervailing power to this. So the powers in Europe felt that they had to make these concessions. That is the case no longer. There is nothing like that. And what we are facing is a very different Europe. So the question is how you deal with that and what you do about it. I happen to believe that the most important thing that's facing us is the restoration of some kind of democratic control over these institutions. I have a quote here, if I can find it, from Immanuel Kant, and it's about what a state is and what democracy is. And he's talking about, in his writings, he says, no independent state, whether it's large or small, may be acquired by another state, by inheritance, exchange, purchase, or gift. For a state, unlike the grounds on which it is based, is not a possession. It is a society of people which no one other than itself can command or dispose of. Like a tree, it has its roots. And to graft it onto another state, as if it were a shoot, to be determined its existence as a moral personality, and to make it into a commodity. He wrote that in the 18th century. And he made the argument that democratic states are less likely to go to war, that democratic states are the best means of not only avoiding war but promoting trade, and that when you resolve the national question in favour of people, you don't encourage extreme nationalism, you do the opposite. You lay the foundation of peace between people. You lay the foundation of trade between people. And yet the European Union has abandoned all of that thinking. And I think it's important to understand, because sometimes you get the concept put forward that, well, the European Union is sort of the institutions of Europe. And the institutions of Europe are there over all the states of Europe, and are some kind of supranational body or group of people expressing the interest of all of Europe. I think nothing could be further from the truth. The European institutions, so-called, are really the plaything of German and French nationalism. That's what they are. They are not, institutions imposing themselves on Germany and France or Britain. They are the expression of these countries to the detriment of the smaller countries in Europe, and the democracies like Ireland, like Greece, like Portugal, like Spain. That's the way they are expressing themselves. So there is not this thing in Europe working for all the states. It is a nationalist, imperialist project, right, which is not about, a free situation of European states. And I think that's important. Now, I said that Kant's ideas of perpetual peace was predicated on the sovereignty of nations and the ability of people to work in cooperation. I've also said that all of this is still up for grabs now. Now, Andy was talking about a situation where Ireland has to be impoverished if we are to follow the diktats of what's coming from Europe. And I think politically that's the challenge for us in our society. How do we capture back or make some progress in this situation? And I can't see any way out of this except beginning to construct arguments which help us to move to another place. I don't know of any way that we can make any progress or construct any movement in this country to challenge this unless we begin to say things which in the immediate sense perhaps will be unpopular, but in the long-term sense I think we have to face up to. I think, for example, we have to begin to construct a way out of the euro. I don't know what that way would be. I don't know how you would do that, because my own thinking on this is quite simple. I don't think it will come by us thinking of a way out of the euro or us challenging the euro. I think it will come because there will be a clash, probably over things that maybe have nothing to do with us as such, maybe with a Greek exit, maybe with a Spanish exit, maybe if Italy has to get loans. We don't know what form that will take. But I still think that we have to construct a movement which begins. In other words, I don't think we can wait for somebody else to do something to collapse, even if we think rationally that that's probably the way it will happen. I still think we have to make the argument to the people about how you would go about this. Now, I personally don't have the skills to hone that argument down enough, but I know politically that we have to begin somewhere, and that's part of the argument. And I know also that, you know, if not us, who? Who will construct this argument if we don't? I don't believe anybody else will do so. And I think we have to begin to do that. I also think we have to begin to talk to people who have political influence and some power. For example, I think we have to... I still swim occasionally up on the Falls Road. And I've done a survey of people in the swimming pool up there. And it's, of course, the nationalist part of Belfast, you all know, and all the rest of it, and a very Republican place. And I asked them all about a united Ireland. And to a man and woman, they were all totally opposed to having anything to do with this place while we are in the euro. And they said to me, why would we want to be dominated by the Germans? Didn't we have to suffer the Brits for all these years? Where's the advantage in that? And I have to say that I agree with them, but I want to make a serious point. I want to make a serious point about that. If Sinn Féin believe that their most important project is to do something to bring about a united Ireland nearer, they cannot run away from the problem of the euro. They have to find a way to address it. Because not alone, you know, unionists would certainly be opposed to it, but it is my belief that most nationalists are totally opposed to the euro and see the destruction that it is doing to the country down here. So we have to begin to do that. And I think we need a serious dialogue with people in Sinn Féin over how you might do that, because there's not much point in going to them and constructing a plan if that's going to lead to complete political isolation. It has to be based on some kind of sound set of ideas that we can develop with them. I'm not going to ask anybody to politically commit suicide in the name of some idea that we have, but I think it's sensible now to begin to bring this forward. I also think that the trade union movement and the labour movement have to be brought into this discussion. Now, that's not impossible when you look at how much they have invested in the European project, because this European project is not simply it is mainly a project of the big multinationals and all the rest of it. But the trade union movement and the labour movement in this country have bought into the idea of social Europe, and I think social Europe is dead and gone. And I think the only way to begin to construct that kind of reality is to win back some kind of national control and begin to tackle some of the problems that Andy was talking about our resources. In other words, to put together a movement which begins to tackle the question of or not necessarily, a movement by bringing people together that are prepared to have a dialogue on this. Because if we don't do this, I don't see that anybody else will. I see Patricia telling me my time is nearly up, so I'll leave her at that.
Thanks very much, Mick. So Mick has finished slightly early, so it means it gives us a little bit of extra time. I just want to thank all three contributors. They've all given us a lot of food for thought. Maybe just to go back to just what Mick finished on in relation to a way out of the euro. I think at the moment it's very, very difficult to get this debate going since you have key people within Europe making announcements, urging all governments and anyone who's making any statements to desist from making any comment about anyone leaving the euro. So they've suppressed the debate on leaving the euro, and as a result of suppressing the debate on leaving the euro, they've also suppressed any kind of discussion within national member states on what other options are open to us. It's a complete assault on our right to determine our future. And I know there are a few people here, I see, when we joined the euro, I was one of the few politicians who actually took part in protests in relation to the fact that it was the folly of the decision to join, particularly without Britain. And now we can see even our gas prices. Every week we hear something more about consumers are going to have to pay more and more and more because we're buying our gas from Britain, we're buying it in sterling, therefore the prices are going up. I mean, it's madness what we have allowed past governments to walk us into, and we do have the right to decide, to discuss and to debate what the options are. But I don't want to keep the floor. I just wanted to also say that the comments made in relation to corporations and their role in decision making, while there is no sort of clear structure there, it's clear that they are actually they're the ones really calling the shots, and because they're so flexible and they can move around, in relation to the global situation, it is very difficult for the ordinary people at a national level to control. So I think it's a key issue. And then just to finish on one of the points that Andy mentioned, which I think is fundamental, it's one of the most important campaigns in this country is in relation to Shell to Sea that's been going on for many years. It's absolute ludicrousy to think that, within this country where we're sitting on assets, that we're just handing them away, not only just handing away, but handing away for nothing, and we aren't even going to get payback from them. It's madness. It's like somebody living in Aylesbury Road who are sending their children out to beg on the streets saying we have no money, we can't afford it. We're sitting on gold mines, literally, and we're allowing foreign multinationals to take the profits right out without giving us anything back. And these people have been demonised down over the last number of years in this campaign, and organisations like AFRI have to be congratulated in keeping this to the fore, and the people over there as well have to be supported.